let's just talk about the one that everyone's dying to talk about or hear us talk about. I know you guys have waited months.
The 2-month-old game. Well, 1 month, I guess.
I mean, it's
Final Fantasy 15.
So it's 5-6 weeks.
16, sorry. Jeez. My goodness.
Stuck in the past here.
Yo,
so,
sorry.
Again, sorry for the delay, guys. I've literally moved my life. But one of the first things I did when I got here was got my PlayStation. Because I was like, I need to play Final Fantasy 16. And then I promptly did not have a lot of time to play Final Fantasy 16 because I was looking for a place to live. But now that I have a place to live, I have played only about 20 hours of this game. I know I don't think you've rolled credits, but I know you like on the home stretch.
Yeah, I'm literally at the like point of no return final mission type thing, and I'm like 55 hours in or something like that.
Okay. And you've done all this, you've done like all the side quests as much as you can. Okay.
I've decided to be a glutton for punishments and do all the side quests, which every now and then feels like it's worth it. A lot of the side quests are not that good. But I feel like they put some really hectic character details in some side quests that probably should be in the main quests. But that's why I'm doing them, because I think those are pretty important to the story, and I quite like them when they do pop up. So
yeah.
But
my gut reaction after 20 hours is that Final Fantasy 16 is a real good time. It's interesting because I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan. Like, I've played most of them, bar I think in the mainline series I haven't gotten around to 12. I haven't rolled credits on 13. Okay. But I've played every single one. So like, this franchise as a whole is very special to me. Like, it's been part of my gaming journey since I've been a kid. Like, Final Fantasy VII was my first RPG. So yeah, to play a game like this, and going in, I didn't really know much about the game, like, intentionally. I knew, like, the extent of what I knew was, it's being made by the combat person who did Devil May Cry. The name completely eludes me now. And then even that, I was like, is that really Final Fantasy? Like, it's meant to be a turn-based RPG, and I know 15 and 13 they've all like sort of started transitioning away from that.
And 7 remake to an extent as well.
But 7 remake, that was a clever. I think that's still probably the best modern version of Final Fantasy, because it just marries real action with the turn-based thing so well. Like, I really like how they've done that system. But now, like, Final Fantasy, I mean, 15 was also like full-on action, but now 16, it feels like a character action game. It feels like a Devil May Cry or a Bayonetta.
100%.
Which is something I wasn't quite sure I would gel with, but man, it's really good. Like, the combat in this game, it's maybe it lacks the RPG depth that some people would like, but I mean, I'm early, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I know when you unlock more abilities, you will have more customization in terms of, what sort of abilities do you use and how do you use them and when do you use them. But yeah, it's long and the short is that it's really good. Like, I'm all in this game, and I'm shocked by how much I'm enjoying it, because I was a bit like, I don't know. Like, I liked 15. But I acknowledge it wasn't the best Final Fantasy. It had like huge problems. 16 is really just blown me away with the scope of the story, the level of cinematics, and just how things keep getting like bigger and bigger. I'm like, oh my god, like, where is the story going? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm very excited to see where it does go. So yeah, that's my knee jerk.
There's a lot of like escalation in this game, and like I think it's very easy to see the influences from like Game of Thrones that they were talking about pre-release. Like, it does have that like warring tribes, political intrigue. I mean, even the map, we were talking about it earlier, looks like the intro to Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? Yeah. I do get the criticism that this is far less of an RPG. I don't think that ever really rectifies itself later on. Like, you get access to a lot of different powers throughout your journeys, but you're still limited to like essentially 6 spells at any given time, because it's 2 according to each icon that you get access to. And you can mix and match there and kind of try and synergize those. But at the end of the day, the most they're doing is this ability.
Numbers.
Yeah, this ability does more stagger damage, or this one does more actual damage.
Yeah.
That's that's kind of the total of it. So, for long periods of the game, I settled on the same sort of build for a very long time before I got access to something new and just kind of like experimented and then found something else that worked a bit better. So in that sense, you are kind of role playing, but it very much is a character action game at the end of the day, which probably will, like, I can understand people who come to Final Fantasy and are like, this is not why I play these games. And that's fair. But I do think that this is a nice new reinvention for the series. I don't think this is going to be the standard going forward. I think this was them trying something different.
That's
and I think it works for this game. So
that's a nice thing with Final Fantasy. Like I laughed yesterday. Like I basically said the same to Lenska. Like, shit, like I'm really enjoying this. Like I'm a big fan, as she knows, and I think it's really good. But then I explained to him, like, just so you know, like I'm a big fan, but if someone like you wanted to play, for example, Final Fantasy 16 is completely separate. They all are. Like, you don't have to play 1 through 15 to be like, oh wow, where's the story going now? Like, but I think that works in the franchise's favor, where every game is different. Like there are common threads or themes throughout, within in certain places, but like Final Fantasy 17 might go straight back to turn-based. They might go, oh no, like let's go back to our roots, proper turn-based RPG, which they haven't done actually for a long time.
Very, very long time. I mean, 13 wasn't that, 15 wasn't that.
No. So I wouldn't be shocked actually if 17 is the return. It's the Mortal Kombat 1 of the Final Fantasy.
They just reboot every time.
Square, please never do that. I'll be so upset if you go.
If they just go back to Final Fantasy 1. No, I like that they keep doing each new one as a numbered one, because, like you said, it is at this point it is an anthology series. Like they all just kind of tell their own story, and then you get every now and then one that spawns its own sequels. Like 13 had technically 3 entries in it. And I think it was it 10 or 12 had 2 entries in it? So,
10 had 10 2. Yeah. And even 15 had the base game, but there was a lot of DLC, which I haven't played, but apparently was very good.
It had episodes for all of your companions. So like episode Ignis, and I actually don't even remember the others. I just, Prompto
and Gladio.
Gladius. But that was kind of cool. And those were like, not sequels per se, but like you said, they just extended the story. And I wonder if we're going to get more for 16. Like I haven't finished it, so I don't know where it kind of ends. But I would 100% take more of this world, because I think it's super, super interesting. And I really like how they've constructed the different kingdoms around the lands, and how they kind of all have their own different religions, and how that ties into the sort of magic around them. So it's really cool. I really, really dig the story. I do think it kind of leans away from that Game of Thrones-y political intrigue near the end. And I don't think it's as much of a bummer as I thought it would be, like as some people led me to believe. But it is definitely a very different shift, and the sort of like focus for the game becomes quite different, but it's still super interesting. And I think this cast of characters is super interesting. I gave a lot of shit to it prior, because like the guy's name is Clive, which is super fucking stupid, but I think he's a great protagonist.
I really like Clive. I think as protagonists go, it's such a weird thing, because like I immediately compare him to like Cloud or Squall or
He's definitely smarter than Cloud, I'll put it that way.
But it's funny, because those you kind of, they take a while for you to come around to liking them, because I feel that way. Like Cloud, like he's a bit of an asshole, and only as you get to play, like, oh, like he's a pretty cool guy, he's just got problems. Clive, I feel like from the get go, I'm like, oh man, this poor dude's been dealt a bad hand, and like I'm watching him come to terms with how things have played out and how he's taking control of his destiny. And like, I really like him. Like, it's a pretty boring name, but as characters go, I think he's a fantastic Final Fantasy lead. And then just bouncing off of that, to go back to the Game of Thrones comparison, I'm sure those of you listening and watching, if you know anything about the game, I'm sure you've heard people say like it's definitely a more mature Final Fantasy. And that's like partially true, because I think Final Fantasy for actual decades has always dealt with mature themes in different ways. But like, I think this game does definitely ramp up the maturity in like even just how visceral it is. Some of the scenes they show, like people being killed or just imagery on screen, I'm like, damn, like, okay, like they're really going all in. This is a mature entry. And then even in terms of the story, I'm like, yeah, it's quite it feels like Final Fantasy is always grand, but it feels like how like Game of Thrones is just the best comparison, because there's a lot going on, but it's done in such a way that you can still understand. Like, obviously it takes a while to learn what all the kingdoms' names are and what the characters, but when you know, you're like, oh, like this is a very intriguing story. Like, I can see how it's all coming together, or how, the threads are being pulled or formed. It's very cool on that front. So I'm quite chuffed.
It definitely does feel like one of the more mature entries that, I mean, I'm far more limited in my scope of like knowledge on the series, because I've played far fewer entries. But like 7 has some interesting themes, with regards to like environmentalism and climate change. But like this one feels like a lot more human, in the sense that it's very human problems that are being discussed here. And like Clive essentially coming from one of the minority groups in the game is quite an interesting thing, because he has empathy with everyone, because he understands the plight of the people that are being like downtrodden, without coming off as like, oh, you weren't someone who was exposed to that, So yeah, I think it's really cool. And just the mythology around this game, like how it's weird. It's like in so many games you see people who are able to wield magic as people who should be, celebrated, whereas Final Fantasy 16 does the complete opposite. And it's like, no, those people who are able to wield magic are technically slaves, and we don't give them the same rights as other people, and we're going to make them use their magic for the betterment of our society until they literally die.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I definitely wanted to touch on how that is such an interesting, like, for lack of a better term, like twist on a typical RPG. Because you're right, it's like in the typical, it's like, oh, you can use magic, like, whoa, you're like a noble person, or you get society's respect. Whereas it took me a while to like, there were points at the beginning of the story I was like, hang on, am I understanding this correctly? Because you can use magic, you're like the scum of the earth, and that's how they frame it, and that's how the story, like, that's one of the foundations for the story. It's like, if you can use magic, you're a branded person, and you really are like scum of society. I was like, that is such an interesting, like, I can't think of any recent media that I've consumed that's had that sort of twist. So I really enjoy that as well.
And the fact that like people who are able to use magic are like all beholden to this curse, where the more they use it, the quicker they are bringing on this like life-ending disease.
Yes.
So it's kind of awful to think about, like, they're essentially put into slavery to use their magic for the betterment of their masters, basically until they become like disposable batteries. They run out and they die, and it's awful. Like, put it this way: Final Fantasy 16 is not subtle about these things, at all. No, it is very on the nose.
Yeah. So I mean, on side quests, like you've said, some of them are very throwaway. But there's one part of the story where I did 2 side quests where it's very on the nose of like, hey, we want you to know that Branded are scum of the earth. And these 2 side quests like really show that. I was like, and that really took me back.
People treat them horribly. Like,
like I obviously won't dive into them for spoiler reasons, but you know what I'm talking about, because I mentioned it on Discord. But I was really like, whoa, that's damn. These poor Branded like really have it rough. What a shit world for them to live in. But
then I guess if you're lucky enough that you were one of these Branded that also has access to an icon, then it's a completely different set of circumstances for you, because you're kind of like heralded as the savior of a particular realm that you're part of. Unless you're like Jill, who turns out she was part of a tribe where everyone there who used magic was just scum of the earth. So yeah, she got the crap end of that stick. But yeah, the icons are kind of cool twist again on Final Fantasy lore, I think. Because I mean, you've always had summons in games, and these summons, the summons always pull from mythologies, and like the icons here are technically the exact same summons you might have seen from other games. Like, I think Ifrit has been in many of them. Ramu definitely has.
And Shiva, those are like staples.
Shiva, yeah.
They've since like the dawn of Final Fantasy 3, I think, so when summons first appeared. It's cool, that they're like integral to the story.
Yeah, completely integral to the story. Like the people who wield these icons are big power players in the story, and you as Clive are seemingly the only person in the world that is able to wield multiple icons. And it leads to these really climatic battles that I think are very expensive. You can see a lot of budget was spent on these exact battles. They're not, I don't think they're the most riveting like combat scenarios, like when you're playing the icon. There are some standout ones, like definitely ones you are getting up to that I know where you are in the game. Like they are probably two of the best coming up. But yeah, they're just fun spectacles. I think visually they're just incredible to see play out, and they're full of like, that's where the anime nonsense gets ratcheted up to like 100 because it's just like, it's weird. Like you have to like stave off an attack by mashing the square button, like you're playing a Zura's Wrath or something. It's really fun though. I like it quite much.
Yeah, but I was gonna get to that as well. That like, as little as I knew about this game, one of the key things I knew was that icon battles are a core feature. And I remember seeing either a video or a screenshot where it's like two icons battling, and there's health bars in the top. It looked like a fighting game, and I was like, what are you doing, Square? This doesn't make sense. I don't want Final Fantasy icon or these
Final
like
Fantasy
a Street
Tekken.
Fighter. Yeah, like I don't want that. But having seen how those scenarios, because we didn't know anything about the story. Like I don't know how often that's going to play out. But now that I'm in the story, I'm like, oh, it's just like once-off spectacles. And you're right, like the gameplay takes a back seat. It's all about this really cool cinematic and how it plays out. I'm like, I'm all in. Like I'm in. I love it. I don't care. Like I know people who don't like JRPGs will look at that and like roll their eyes so hard. I'm like, I don't care. I'm here for it. Show me, make the fighters bigger, more Dragon Ball Z. It's cool. Like I want to see it.
100%. But you're right. I think that's a good point. They aren't overused. They're not something that happens every hour. They are like act-ending spectacles that round off like a particular story arc, and I think they're used to great effect there. I probably can count the total number of them on like one hand. So I mean, they're done really sparingly and very well.
I think visually as well, it's such a weird thing because I think the game, like it's not the most cutting edge looking game. Like, and I don't mean that as an insult. Like if you compare it to something like recently Star Wars Jedi Survivor, like that's a very pretty looking game. Final Fantasy 16 is really pretty, but like when it comes to,
it's not on that level.
No, it's not on that level. But when it comes to the cinematic stuff, I look at my PlayStation, I'm like, oh my god, this poor thing must be stressing because there's a lot going on screen. Like the scale of those battles, there's a lot going on, and it just runs. It's really cool.
Yeah, it runs super well on PlayStation. Like, I think I very much appreciate it being on PS5 because the loading is like super like low. Like jumping around the world and fast traveling is really easy. The scale of the world is quite large, which I appreciate. But you're right. Like, if I'm not mistaken, this was based off of the same like engine work that was done for Final Fantasy 14. So it's like a whole new thing to bring to consoles and to adapt. And it doesn't look the best, but I think it's got a really good art direction. I think everything looks really nice,
Yeah, I just want to stress, I don't think it's a bad looking game at all.
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful game, but it's not quite at that level some other games we've seen, but it is beautiful. Like I love the way it looks. And
there's some
the
good
art direction.
There's some good lighting moments in there, like when you're walking through a dark like castle, and Clive like throws up that little orb of fire so you can see that. Those little moments are real fucking good.
I just pan the camera around and I'm like, yeah.
There's moments. But I agree with you. Like there's sometimes you're exploring, especially like the open world, and it's like, well, this feels a bit empty and bland, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's nothing that got in the way of me enjoying the game and me enjoying a lot of the characters. And yeah, I'm like kind of sad that I'm near the end of it, but it's been a very surprising thing for me, because I knew I was going to play this. Like I knew that I was interested in this, and I knew that I was going to pick it up and give it a go, but I didn't realize how quickly it would sink its like hooks into me and like not let go. I've been playing this game, basically it's the only thing I've been playing since its launch, because I just have like far less time to play games now, and it's been nice to chip away at it a few hours at a time. And I love it a lot. In the same way that I loved Final Fantasy 15 for all its issues. Like I love that game. I think it's not nearly perfect, but I feel the same for 16. But I think 16 overall as a package is a much better cohesive
I think it's a better Final Fantasy
thing. Than Final Fantasy 15, and I've really enjoyed my time with it. Yeah,
it's a good time.
You should play it. Yeah,
I'm very keen to keep playing. Oh, who's that? Is that Toby?
No, it's Abby. She's actually bugging me. She keeps walking up and down. She has this thing where as soon as someone's sitting at a desk, she's like, "Cool, I'm gonna come fuck with you." That's just her MO. Yeah.
Like, tell me about Final Fantasy. It's good.
So every time I move my mouse, she just like headbutts my hand, and I'm just scared I'm gonna click something that I shouldn't.
Stop recording.
Here's a tail. There we go.
Nice.
Good lord.
It's cool. But yeah, that's Final Fantasy 16. I'm very keen to keep playing it, but yeah, from my 20 hours and your almost finished 55, 60 hours, would recommend. Great game.
Yeah, definitely would recommend.
Really
and also like 55 hours, it's kind of crazy to think that is almost a somewhat short game now.
Well,
but yeah, I'm kind of happy that it's only
you're doing
around
everything
50.
and it's only 55 hours. I'm like, man, that the dream.
You could easily, if you mainline this game, and
I think
like I'm in 2 months of whether or not you should
30.
do that. Yeah, 25 or 30 easily. I know Jeff did that, and it was around like 30 or so hours. So yeah, you can definitely do that, and I don't think that's like you're not going to get less of a game because of that. I just wish it was better. I wish there was like a delineation, like some games do, where they go like, this is an important side quest and this is a different side quest, you know? Like
so
character side quests and other ones.
Last thing I'll touch on, I've noticed some side quests have an icon above it, like a plus.
Like a little plus.
And at no point do they explain like, oh, those side quests usually have some benefits. Because I was like,
those are all
what?
upgrade side quests.
Yeah, I was like, what is this? And I did it. It's like, oh, this quest gave me whatever. I was like, oh.
Those you
like,
should absolutely do. Yeah.
Yeah, like the one quest gave me, I mean, I don't think this is a spoiler. It's a Final Fantasy. The one quest gave me a chocobo to ride. I'm like, you could
it's kind of nuts that's in a side quest.
Miss this and then just have to run around the world.
Yeah, it's crazy that's ridiculous. In a side quest to me. Yeah, you'll get more, which will help with like your healing and the number of potions you can carry and stuff like that. Like, it's annoying that those quests themselves aren't that super fun to play, but yeah, they are super. I think very vital to like continue the game. Like, I don't think you will fail to finish the game without them, but they certainly help me, especially if you're like going after some of the bigger monsters on the hunt board. They will whack you for 6, no problem.
My goodness. But yeah, that's Final Fantasy 16 at last. We spoke about it.